Hello, and welcome to the Sirius Football Heads Podcast, Episode 1, where we're talking about the 2018-2019 Combine. Actually, no, it's just 2019 now, isn't it? 2019 Combine and Free Agency. You have me, Jay Brown, as the host, and my co-host is Tom White.
Good afternoon, everybody.
And this is the first of hopefully many episodes where we'll be talking during the business season as well as the regular season. Any ideas on how you envision this show going forward?
Well, fortunately, there's an awful lot to talk about today, particularly this time of year because of the impending free agency. The combine just finished up and everybody's making moves. They're trading. There's several trades came down today. The Steelers agreed to trade Marcus Gilbert to the Cardinals. The Giants trade Olivier Vernon to the Browns for Kevin Zeitler. You've got players speaking out. Eagles defensive end Michael Bennett saying he's not taking a pay cut. Well, that's nice of him to say that. I don't know what the rest of the league thinks about it, but he has his opinion. A lot of action going down in Jacksonville right now. They've cut Malik Jackson, Carlos Hyde, Tashawn Gibson, and their long snapper, Carson Tinker. I don't know what he did. But they're obviously making a lot of roster moves to clear out money to get Nick Foles in there.
Yeah, that's what I heard as well. We'll touch upon the Combine a little bit later, but with the high priority of free agency this weekend, I think we should start with that. Let me switch us over to the NFL.com page.
It's really interesting how many free agents are out there right now. There's a glut in some of the positions, defensive tackle particularly, which is interesting only because we've got such a strong defensive tackle class in the draft. So I think much like what happened with the safeties last year, these defensive tackles are going to be hanging on for a while before they catch on with somebody.
Yeah, it's I don't know what it is with the NFL and the defensive side of things lately. It just seems that they're willing to just throw bodies at, especially the defensive line. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's not a lot of top end defensive linemen across the league. The ones that are top end have all been franchise tagged. Yeah. And it was pretty interesting. Out of the 6 franchise tags that were put out, I think 5 of them were defensive pass rushers. The Robbie Gould, the kicker for San Francisco, being the 6th. And they're a real commodity. If you've got one, you want to keep one.
Yeah, that is definitely. I know with Seattle, we prize our defensive side of the ball a lot more than our offensive side. And yeah, we seem to just let people go this last offseason. I mean, Earl Thomas, I knew he was going to be gone right away, as you can.
And he's another guy that's, I think, in for a rude awakening.
Yeah.
Wanting to be paid as the highest paid safety in the league, and he's what, 32?
Yeah,
31, 32.
Yeah.
So that's going to be.
He isn't 30-year-old yet actually.
Oh, okay. Well,
so he's probably
still
29.
Yep. And yeah, now that you open that up, these guys I think are all in for a little bit of an awakening. I'm interested to see what happens with Le'Veon Bell. I agree with Pat and Jim that he's not going to get the money he asks for. But we'll have to wait and see on that.
Yeah, that holdout had a big negative impact on his branding, his image.
It made no sense. I mean, $14 million that he'll never see again. And what did he prove?
Nothing.
That I'm not playing for the franchise tag. Okay, congratulations. He wasted a year. You're a year older. You're a running back, which is never good for that, as far as that goes.
Yep.
And he didn't prove anything. It was totally senseless, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. And Earl Thomas, being a fan of Seattle, did I agree with him flipping off our bench when he got hurt? No. But I also understand it because honestly, the Seattle mentality when it comes to free agencies is very similar to what Baltimore's is. We'll let you do things, but we're going to give you a fair offer. I know John Schneider shops around all of our players all the time, trying to get a market value. So when it comes time for their free agency, he knows how to offer them a better deal. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And the players don't see it that way.
You know, there's several teams around the league that have a real sense of camaraderie, and coincidentally, they're also the teams that tend to win more. And I think that's something that's really important, particularly in a sport like football that is so team oriented, and one guy can't walk on the field and make a difference without the benefit of everyone else's work. And when you get a guy that's as uncontented as Earl Thomas was, that was I thought totally uncalled for.
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked to see. I would have liked to see him be more team oriented this last year, but he pretty much just like, I've got a job to do. I'm going to do my job and present myself as the player that I am, because I think he knew we weren't going to franchise tag him or anything else after this year. We were just going to let him go, and
right.
And unfortunately the injury happened, and you never wish an injury on any player. So.
Now, the next player on the list here, Trey Flowers, I've got a particular interest in. For the Los Angeles Chargers, they've got 4 defensive tackles that are all free agents right now. They didn't pick up the option on Corey Liuget. Brandon Mebane is a free agent. And then the 2 backups, Damian Square and Darius Philon, are also unsigned. And to me, I think that's the biggest weakness on the Charger team is that interior defensive line and interior linebackers. And it seems like Telesco is making a move to improve that situation, which is where Trey Flowers comes in. Now, Flowers is one of those guys that I expect is going to get a mega deal on day one.
Oh, yeah.
And the Chargers don't usually do that. But we are a team that I think is just a couple players away. And it might be interesting to see the Chargers do what the Rams did last year and pick up 1 or 2 mega guys like this. And Trey Flowers with Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram would be an amazing defensive line.
Oh, yeah.
Regardless of who else, plays that other position. So I'm looking closely at that and see if something might come from it. I don't have high hopes. Like I said, the Chargers never do that mega deal. But this might be a different year. Who knows?
Same thing with Seattle. I would love to see him come to Seattle, and it would help us give St. Louis, I keep calling them St. Louis, the Rams, Los Angeles Rams, a run for their money when it comes to the actual division. It seems to be one of those things like when San Francisco was big that year before we won the Super Bowl, we were battling each other back and forth that whole season. And we kind of were able to do the same thing this year, but we had a few games that we just should have won that, that we just let go. And it would be nice. It was our offense that let it go. It wasn't our defense, but
you talk about adjusting to the Los Angeles Rams as opposed to St. Louis. I have spent 2 years in absolute hell, not referring to the Chargers as the San Diego Chargers, instead as the Los Angeles Chargers. And then the Alliance League comes around, and every time the San Diego Fleet plays and I hear the name, I cringe because it's like, you're not supposed to say San Diego.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I need to look at the what is it? It's the AAF, right?
Yes.
I have to look to see what teams they have, because I suspect a Portland team, if it's not already there, will be coming to rival Seattle.
There is not a Portland team, but there might be a Portland team in the XFL, which is coming out not to our
There's actually a Seattle team. There's going to be a Seattle team for that.
Is there?
Yeah. The XFL is trying to reinsert itself into the NFL markets again. So I don't know.
We'll see. I mean, we kind of drifted into this topic, but one of the things about this league, and I've been enjoying watching it. I have yet to sit down and watch an entire game, but I'll watch bits and pieces of it. And there are some decent players in there. There are players I don't ever need to see play again. Christian Hackenberg, I don't need to see him quarterback ever again. Mike Bercovici for the San Diego Fleet. I'm a big Arizona State fan, so I watched him all through Arizona State. I watched him for 2 years with the Chargers, and he's one of those guys that he'll come out, he'll do 3 great plays in a row and then fumble or throw an interception or just, and it's consistent. He's never changed from the time he started playing in college till now. And I don't need to see him play again either. I don't need to see Trenton Richardson play again.
Oh yeah.
But there are some guys out there. Not Orlando. What is it? Birmingham has a quarterback named Luis Perez, who's a kid. I forget where he's from, but he was with the Rams in their training camp for 20 minutes last year. But he's showing some real promise and is doing a really good job at the quarterback position, as are several other guys across the league, none of whom you would expect to see playing the way that they are. And so that's been fun to watch. And again, there's players that just kind of you forgot about. And suddenly they show up and you go, oh, yeah, look at that guy. There was a linebacker out of Arizona, University of Arizona, named Scooby Wright. And it was a first round or second round draft pick, I think, but got hurt his end of his collegiate career and never really recovered. And consequently, burned out in the NFL really quick. And then all of a sudden I'm watching an AAF game last weekend, and this guy comes up and puts a monster hit on somebody. I'm like, whoa, who was that? And sure enough, there's Scooby Wright, and he seems to be back. So who knows? Maybe the guy will get another shot.
Yeah. All right. So I found a CBS article on my phone with their week 1 power rankings for the AAF. Oh, okay. That's an easy website to pull up later. I'm thinking maybe we'll, depending on how long the show averages on its run as far as timing, maybe we can have like a 10, 15-minute segment each week or each couple of podcasts for the AAF, the Alliance, what is it? Alliance of American Football?
Alliance of American Football. My question with all of these other leagues is where are these players coming from? We don't really have 32 quarterbacks in the NFL,
right? Much
less, another 8-team league for the Alliance, and then the XFL coming in, and I don't know what their plan is, but there's a lot of football jobs open, and I don't think a lot of guys to fill them. So we'll see what happens as far as the talent level goes. I really liked the XFL when it first came out.
Yeah.
I thought the biggest mistake they made was going head to head with the NFL. If they had just stayed the course of what they started with, and I remember thinking that if I was working with them, the logo for me for the XFL would have been, just because football's done with me doesn't mean I'm done with football.
Yeah.
And they had all of those great players come back, and and guys like Tommy Maddox came out of the XFL back into the NFL. And there were a tremendous amount of innovation in the XFL that is now commonplace in the NFL. The Skycam was first introduced in the XFL. There's a couple of other presentation procedures that originated there, and they were very innovative. They had some really stupid stuff like the fumble instead of the opening kickoff. And they just throw the ball out and 2 guys would run 20 yards and jump on it. And I think it was 2 weeks before someone had a broken arm doing it.
Yeah, when it comes to these leagues, I think the biggest problem is they want to compete with the NFL, but what they should be considering is maybe not so much like a minor league system like we have for Major League Baseball, but basically treat it as like a extra practice for those players that haven't quite made the NFL or on the low end of the team, like players 45 through 53 and the practice squad. Give them an opportunity to play on these teams.
They actually had those meetings last week at the Combine.
Yeah.
And Bill Polian was talking about it, and they're now considering doing the same thing they did with NFL Europa of designating players to go play in this league. And I know on the Chargers, our backup quarterback situation is horrendous. We have Geno Smith backing up Rivers, and then Cardell Jones on the practice squad. And just as an example of how bad Geno Smith really is, in the Arizona game last year, Phillip Rivers went 28 of 29 for passing, They pulled him out of the game. Geno Smith came in and went 0 for 5.
Yeah.
You just got to say, I'm sorry, but I think that you should be able to complete a pass against these guys and nothing. And Cardell Jones is one of those guys that's a great athlete, but has no instinct for playing the quarterback position at all. But putting him into the AAF might be a really positive thing for him and really give him some, real game time experience. And maybe he develops into something, but he's not going to develop into anything sitting on the practice squad.
Yeah, and I know the rules for the CFL are a little bit different than the NFL, but even that, if they worked out a partnership, they could, because they play pretty much in the business season for the CFL up till training camp, I think, if I remember correctly. But that would be a great, just practice for guys as well,
Oh yeah, a lot of guys are hesitant to go to Canada though.
I know.
For a lot of different reasons. Johnny Manziel just left Canada, which made me laugh because he was released for breaking a contractual something or other, and I never got the real detail on it, but he basically voided his contract by whatever he did, and now he's back. And the last I heard last week, they were having talks about bringing him into the AAF, and I haven't heard anything more about it. I think he might have worn out his welcome.
Yeah. I mean, the guys like Johnny Manziel, this would be a great opportunity for him, something like the AAF, to get his act together, to get his life in order. But at the same time, I can understand where, how do I want to put this? I can understand why these leagues would be hesitant of players like him, because he is a problem child. Josh Gordon being another one of those,
Yep.
And if they can, and this is a big if because there's such a small league or association, whatever you want to call it. If these types of players can prove that they can get back on track, NFL teams would be willing to bring them in again at that point.
Do you have an example of someone that's ever done that? I'm trying to think about a guy that was a total disaster. Well, Pacman Jones, to a certain extent, he was a total disaster, and then in the last 4 or 5 years, kind of turned his career around. I'm not even sure if he's on a roster now or not, but maybe you could use him. But he still keeps getting into trouble as well. I can't think of anyone that's actually ever done that.
I don't know of too many people that have done that either, but at the same time, give me just a second here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. NFL.com. Pacman was given the opportunity, and he realized it short of actually getting his final, his final option or final kicked out of the system, kicked out of the league. That is what the NFL hopes players will do, but that doesn't actually work out that well. You know what I mean?
No, most of the guys like Justin Blackmon, Josh Gordon, I think he has deeper issues than just substance abuse. But those guys never come back. They, jump David Irving. All right, this guy's so far gone now. He's like, you can't fire me, I quit.
Yeah.
And, so I think once you go down that path, I think that's a really difficult path to get off of or come back from. I remember years ago, there was a defensive lineman for the Washington Redskins. Oh, geez, his name is escaping me right now. This would have been in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and he was a defensive lineman, and he was also illiterate. Made it through college, went to the pros, had just time and time again, had drug issues. And I happened to be on a flight from DC to Phoenix, and he sat next to me. Oh, his name will come to me in a second. And I got into a nice conversation with him, but I remember looking at him and saying, he'd just been traded to the Cardinals, and had just come off a suspension and was traded. And I looked at him. I said, you're not going to get too many more chances like this. If you can't get your act together, you're not going to be in the league much longer. And he looked at me in all sincerity. He said, "Oh, I know. I'm very aware of that, and I'm committed to maintaining this chance that I get here with the Cardinals." And I think he was in the league for another 4 months, and he relapsed again, and then it was gone.
Yeah.
Gosh, his name will come to me in a second. This is a senior moment I'm having.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Adam Jones is on a team anywhere. But at the same time, I'm not even seeing him in the historical players, so he must have just decided to retire not too long ago.
Yeah, I think he was with the Bengals last year, and I think he retired, but
yeah.
I can't remember for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, either way, it's having these players be able to have an option to go and actually, how do I want to put this? Not necessarily rehab, but see the errors of their ways in the NFL.
Right.
And be able to I guess rehabilitation would be the correct word. Rehabilitate their career through something like the AAF, XFL, CFL. I get why they don't do it.
Dexter Manley was the name of the player that I was talking with, and I found it by Googling defensive tackle illiterate, and his name is the first one that popped up. So
why does that not surprise me?
All right. So let's go back to free agency again.
Yeah.
We got these lists of these top free agents, and Foles is going to Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Obviously, Landon Collins is an interesting guy. And CJ Wright is an interesting guy. What do you think about him?
KJ Wright?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to see him stay. I really would. However, he has had that knee injury this last season, and I wouldn't be disheartened if he got a better deal somewhere and left. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. As a fan of the NFL as a whole, it's easy for me to root for players, but as a fan of a team, it still it feels like a knife in the back when the players leave. Like Richard Sherman going to San Fran. I'm crazy proud for the guy. He does a lot of great work, and he still helps out in the community here in Seattle, which is nice. Not a lot of players will do that. They'll just pack up their charity and take it to wherever they're going. You know what I mean?
Right.
But he still keeps it here because his I'm not sure if she's his wife still or if it's girlfriend or fiance, but Richard Sherman's significant other still lives in the area here, and I think wants to stay here. So that's kind of nice.
There's a player the Chargers have that I'm intrigued to see where he falls, and that's the wide receiver Terrell Williams. He's a significant deep threat. He's a large receiver. He's fairly consistent. He's had a drop or two, but nothing that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the rumor has it the Raiders are pushing hard for him. Are going to make a hard run at him. And to me, this is a guy that he's going to make a lot of money in free agency, and the Chargers are not going to match it because they've got depth at that position and much bigger needs than that. But he's a guy that I could see ending up in New England.
Yeah,
and he's exactly what New England needs right now.
Yeah, I could definitely see him doing that. I mean, I don't think we have any wide receivers out for free agency this year, but we'll have a couple in next year, I believe. So I could see getting not so much a deep threat, although it'd be nice to have a dual deep threat going on each side of the field. That would be
right. And they're working now on Denzel Perryman. Hopefully they'll make a deal with him before Wednesday. He's a really, really good tackling linebacker, but he just hasn't been able to stay on the field. And that's been a real issue. So if he, treats himself a little better and stops, tackling with his head and stops, just trying to kill everybody instead of just tackle him, maybe he stays on the field a little longer and is a little bit more productive.
Well, here's an interesting one: the HaHa Clinton Dix. With us losing with Earl Thomas, I'm pretty satisfied with how our safeties have handled themselves on such short notice, and with a full off season to prep and study. I think we could do fine. But having Haha Clinton Dixon there as like a nickel back basically, that would be.
Yeah, I think he's pretty attractive to a lot of different teams. I don't know what it's, this happens with players occasionally. Suddenly they are on the move. And he was I thought, entrenched in Green Bay. And then, boom, he's gone. He's in Washington, and now he's free again. And, he'll end up with another team. And I think he's a real solid player, but I kind of get the feeling there's something else, going on behind it.
Yeah, I think a lot of what's going on with the Green Bay side of things is, one, definitely it's a new coach in there. But two, I think Aaron Rodgers is trying to purge the team of what he liked or didn't like, or doesn't like about the team. And I don't know that defense was what Aaron would think of as a good defense for their style of offense.
Isn't Clay Matthews a free agent this year too?
I haven't seen his name, but he could be on there. Let's see.
Eric Weddle was just released. Jason Verrett. Don't get me started.
Clay Matthews, number 56.
Yep, there you go. And he's in his early 30s. He's the kind of guy, though, that for a team like the Chargers or a team like the Saints or even the Rams, he could come in, and play 2 or 3, more years and provide a really solid base for a defense. I would not be opposed to bringing him in at all.
Yeah. Well, here's an interesting one. Justin Coleman from Seattle. He's one of those corners that he could get beat, but he can also make really good plays. It's just on a particular play he's going to be involved in, which one are you going to get? You know what I mean?
Right.
He can hit pretty good. All Seattle players on the defense pretty much know how to tackle properly. I mean, yes, there are times when you're sacking a quarterback or you're hitting a receiver in the air, you're going to get penalized, and you can't stop that. But physics is a thing, and the NFL just doesn't realize it. But at the same time, he just doesn't. I think he's trying to get on the cover of sports magazines, ESPN highlight reels, and he doesn't play per se the ball or the player. He just plays, and it gets him beaten coverage sometimes.
Right. Little anecdote I tell sometimes. I was in the car with my wife and listening to NFL radio, and they were having that concussion discussion where everyone's talking about the technology and the speed and the helmets and this and that, and we got to do this to stop concussions, etc. And my wife is a neurosurgical nurse practitioner, so she deals with concussions and brain and spine injuries all the time.
Yeah.
And she's listened to this for about 10 minutes. She looks at me and says, I'm no expert, but if I didn't want a concussion, I wouldn't tackle people with my head. And I just started laughing. I went, well, there you go. Cause and effect right there. How do we stop, lessen concussions in the league? Stop tackling with your head.
Oh, exactly. I mean, I remember I played 2 years of organized high school football. All the rest of the time I just played backyard tackle football with my friends growing up, because young, stupid teenagers. That's the way we did.
Sure. Yeah, we used to do in Phoenix, they would irrigate the fields. And the first day of irrigation, there'd be about 3 inches of water. And we'd go out and play tackle football in that.
Yeah. But I remember my football coach, my head football coach, my 2 years of playing, was a offensive lineman for Nebraska in their heyday in the 60s, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
But his biggest thing about tackling or playing offensive line, and I played 8-man football, so we're talking big field, lot less coverage space. You have to cover everything yourself.
Right.
But when it came to tackling, his biggest thing is you have your head up and tucked back into your shoulders to lessen the ability of you tackling with your head. And that's always stuck with me,
Yeah.
You're not locking it in place, but you're also not allowing a whole lot of movement. And I don't.
And I was a big proponent of the new helmet-to-helmet rule.
Yeah.
And I thought that it was working really well, particularly at the beginning of the season. And then they just stopped calling it. It was just all of a sudden you'd see this helmet-to-helmet stuff, and some of it fairly vicious, and they just wouldn't call it.
Yeah,
Which, and now we're off on a whole nother discussion.
That's the way things go when you leave it in a free-form format like this.
But I wish there was more consistency with, the first 4 games and the last 4 games, and particularly the playoffs. And whichever way you want to do it is fine, but just be consistent about it. And and that's just what's so frustrating. And then you come to the situations like with the Saints in the playoffs, and it's just ridiculous. So,
oh yeah, that can be a discussion for another time, because I'm on the side of the Saints in this one, but at the same time, I'm also, you had such a big lead, you should never have allowed it to get to this point.
Well, that all of that, comes into play. And my philosophy is you don't lose a game in the first quarter. If you're in a position to win the game with 2 minutes to play, then you need to win the game with 2 minutes to play. Everything that's come before it is in the past and irrelevant. What's important now is the next play. And if you make the next play, you win the game. And in this instance, the Saints were robbed, no question about it, and didn't make the next play, but the Rams did, and the Rams won the game.
Yep.
But you do the right thing on that call, and the chances are astronomical that the Saints will win the game. Not to say that, there's not a fumble or an interception or whatever, but it certainly, goes from maybe to a almost slam dunk. So,
yep, and that's the hard thing about the NFL and officiating, is that people don't realize that these men and women now are trying to make split-second decisions in real time. They don't have the opportunity to review it 15 times between plays like we do, sitting at home watching whatever broadcast you're watching.
Yeah. And then at the same time, there was that play. And
yeah, no, I mean, don't get me wrong.
There's no way you don't throw that flag, much less the guy waves off the other guy who was running in to throw the flag.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, it was sad. There's a lot of discussion I've been hearing about the adding that ref in the sky. And that's another one of the innovations that the Alliance is doing. They have that guy. And last week, they stopped play and called a foul on a play where no flag was thrown. And it was clearly a foul.
Oh, yeah.
So to me, that's the way you fix this. And,
I totally agree. I have no problem with that. Because
particularly in a playoff game where you've got your entire, New York is watching every single play. When you get to a situation like that, they have to call down and say, wait a minute, hold on. Yeah. Take another look at this.
Yeah, I forget who's the head of officiating right now, but he should have called down there like right away and been like, no, you have to call
no.
I mean,
and the other thing, they people always, when you get into these discussions, they're always talking about making the game too long. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But the reality is, if you can challenge anything, doesn't mean you have more challenges.
Exactly.
You can challenge anything. They could have challenged that play and then said, that was pass interference, that was helmet to helmet. We want you to review that. And then they can review it. And then the other argument for that is, well, what if in the background they see holding someplace else? The reality is you're challenging that play. You're challenging pass interference. That's all they should look at is pass interference.
Exactly.
It's not that complicated.
No, because I mean, when you challenge a penalty call or lack thereof, whoever makes the first challenge is the one who gets the challenge. Because it's like if they're reviewing it and you could see all the replays up on the jumbotron and you're the opposing coach and you see holding, too bad. Your team should have told you that. Your team should have had you call that before they did.
We want you to review that. That was holding. And you can go from there. So
I mean, Seattle's. I think it was either the last game of the season or playoff game. We got away with a major offensive pass interference because our receiver literally came in and as the ball was coming to him, saw the defender had an opportunity to intercept, and he used his arm in trying to position his hands to make the catch, knock the other guy's arms out of the way. That's offensive pass interference every time. They didn't call it. I'm not going to sit there and bitch about it, but
the Chargers scored 2 touchdowns last season on a false start by our tackle, and both of them were egregiously false starts.
Oh, yeah.
To the point that one of the refs was fired. In the Cleveland game, we were well ahead. It wasn't really that significant in terms of the outcome of the game, but it was so egregious they fired the referee. And then in the Pittsburgh game, same situation on the other side, 2 steps before the ball is snapped, and Rivers throws a touchdown, and they didn't call it. And that did, in fact, win the game for the Chargers. So,
I mean, I had a lot of issues with the Chargers-Seattle game, and I was at that game this year.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that holding is a part of every play on the offense and defensive game.
He barely touched him.
When I'm seeing the jersey kind of be pulled, and I can see separation of the jersey and the pads, that needs to get called. And that happened more than once. Now, again, Seattle shouldn't have played as crappily as we did for that game. I mean, that first drive that we had, you would have thought we were going to do that all game long, and we didn't.
Yep.
You guys just adapted a lot better than we did.
I was up there, too, for that game, as a matter of fact.
Oh, you were? I wish I'd known. I would have.
Yeah.
Where were you sitting? Which side of the field?
Yeah, we were on the 12-man flag was to our right.
Okay.
So we were on that side.
I was on that same side, actually.
Yeah,
I was closer to the flag than I was midfield. We generally try to get midfield, but...
Yeah, we were high at about the 10-yard line.
It's a very nice stadium out there, though. There's really not a bad seat in the place.
I've been there a number of times. I mean, I used to live in Spokane, so we'd go over all the time whenever the Chargers came up. And then I also shot a commercial there, so I've been in there a number of times.
Yeah. I can only afford to go once a year, though. That's what sucks.
It is expensive, no question about that. So
let's see. Adrian Peterson's free agency this year. Kelvin Benjamin. I'm not surprised to see them letting him go. Kostowski.
He must have somebody in the wings, because otherwise he would have tagged him.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking that his backup, or he found somebody that in this draft that he really loves.
So, and there's not, it's still, he still could, make a deal and come back as well. So that's always on the table. So here's an interesting thing. I'm kind of intrigued to see where Teddy Bridgewater goes. I would love for him to come to the Chargers and sit for a year behind Phillip Rivers, and then work his way to being the heir apparent, which is see him up here. Which is, as I said, so drastically needed for the Chargers. Another scenario for that particular situation could possibly arise. I don't think this will happen. I don't believe that the Cardinals will go for Kyler Murray with the #1 overall pick. Nothing about that makes sense to me. In addition to, if I'm correct in this, and I think this is what Pat said last week, if they trade Josh Rosen, that's an $8 million cap hit. If they keep Josh Rosen, he counts for like $3 million against the cap.
Yeah.
So that in itself tells me that Josh Rosen isn't going anywhere, and there's no reason for him to. Why not bring in this Kyler Murray kid and let the two of them battle it out? That makes perfect sense to me. I don't know why they would do it any other way. But in the eventuality that they do take Kyler Murray and they do want to move Josh Rosen, when it comes to the Chargers draft pick at number 28, I would seriously consider giving Arizona our #1 draft pick at 28 in exchange for Josh Rosen and their #2 pick at 33. That would drop the Chargers back 5 picks and get them a backup / heir apparent to Phillip Rivers. And at that point in the draft, I'm anticipating that all the players on our board that we really, really had, rated high would be gone, and the guys would be looking at were all pretty much graded out the same.
Yeah.
and dropping back 5 picks isn't going to be that significant.
No, and it actually gives you a chance to restack your board since you're going from the first round, which is one night, to the second and third round the next day. So
yep. So, but I doubt seriously that scenario would come to pass.
I doubt it either. Here's an interesting thought for Arizona. If you could get Teddy Bridgewater, not necessarily on a veteran minimum, but not on a breakout contract, and you draft Kyler Murray, you could still keep Josh Rosen and have all three compete out for the position.
That's what Pete Carroll does.
Oh, I know. But it'd be interesting to see how Josh Rosen would respond to that, because if it comes down to it, he could be put down on the practice squad. He could be traded or let go, which I doubt they would do either of those, again because of the cap hit. But if worst comes to worst, you sign Teddy Bridgewater to a 1 or 2 year deal, it's not going to be as bad of a hit if he loses out, and you could trade him away or cut him that way,
Mm-hmm.
Or even you could go even a little lower and go with Tyrod Taylor. Where did he? I mean, not that I would want him, but where is he? Tyrod. I just saw you.
65.
65. Okay.
Yeah.
I knew he was right near a Green Bay player. Yeah, I could agree with this assessment. He is a shaky starter, but could really be a good backup somewhere. And with Arizona's team, if they keep Fitzgerald around one more year, that could give him a better safety blanket than he's ever had before.
Yeah.
And Fitzgerald's gone from basically being a true number one to more of a slot possession style receiver, morphing his own career to last longer. I think that would help him out a lot. CJ Henderson.
Boy, I am just astounded at the names that are on this free agency list. This is going to be really interesting, and it's going to be, I think, as usual, the first day will be a flurry of big, mega contracts, and then over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks, people will start getting signed. But I bet a lot of these guys don't get signed till training camp or well into the preseason.
Especially somebody like Michael Crabtree.
Yeah, and the names on this list are astounding in terms of who's free right now. So this is going to be fun.
Yep. Adrian Peterson. I mean, I wouldn't give him a big deal contract myself, but Kelvin Benjamin, you could kind of get away with that. Cole Beasley, Tyler Eifert's 50.
And then you had Devin Funchess and Adam Humphries, John Brown,
Thomas Davis. Wow.
Yeah, no, there's a Jamie Collins is out there, and Jamie Collins was released. He could be signed right now.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know why he hasn't. If I'm Tom Telesco, I'm going out and signing him right now. 104 tackles last year, and it's only 29.
For all his lack of first round pedigree, Carpenter was not a bad offensive lineman for Seattle.
Who was?
James Carpenter.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't mind seeing him back. I mean, I wouldn't want to pay him high caliber money, but we've got a pretty good depth there now.
Wow. All right, there you go.
But yeah, let's transition over to the combine really quick. I mean, I don't think we have to spend too much time on it, but at the same time, there's a lot of interesting stuff here. Like when I was first looking at this yesterday, I wanted to tweet at the NFL that I think that their website here sucks, to say the least, because when it selects everything here, I'm like, okay, that's great. Let me select quarterback. Well, what I just did, and I didn't realize it at first because nothing changed here, is it wasn't that I was selecting quarterback; I was deselecting it. So if you want to narrow it down to quarterback, you have to deselect every
Oh, I
single
see.
one of
Yeah.
these. And then it puts them in by name rotation or sorting.
Right.
Then you have to select time.
I'm not overly thrilled with the quarterbacks, to be honest. I think Haskins is the top of the bunch, and everyone else is going to be kind of a journeyman player. I know Pat disagrees with that. I was in Mobile, and we had a little bit of a discussion about it there as well. And he likes a couple of the guys pretty well. I just was not impressed.
I thought this was pretty funny when I was just cycling through yesterday. Not a single one of them threw up weights. I mean, I don't expect them to because they want to save their arm for throwing. I get that, that's not a big deal. But I did think it was kind of funny. Running backs. I mean, that's pretty respectable right there.
Yeah, as far as the reps go.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, and the consensus seems to be that, with the exception of the kid out of Alabama, all of these running backs will be 3rd and 4th round picks.
Yeah, I think it will be too. So, but I just thought it would be pretty interesting.
Now, defensive line was the crown jewel of the combine this year. There are, God, I bet there's 10 of them go in the 1st round.
I don't doubt that. Give me just 1 second here. All right. So sorry about that. Just a first time doing this, and my wife is watching a TV show that's coming up. Like I told you before, sound is not the great. Soundproofing in this house is not the greatest, but I don't think it's affecting the podcast.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah. The joy of having a dynamic mic versus the condenser mic that I have over in the corner. But yeah, the defensive line, I didn't get to watch any of the combine this weekend because unfortunately I have a retail job and I work weekends. But I find it interesting that the defensive line coming out this year, just defense in general actually seems to be a lot better than it has been over the last few years. I don't know if it's the recruiting classes were better 3-4 years ago, or if the players actually want to make the NFL and are trying to be more than just one-dimensional guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was hearing somebody was saying that they're anticipating as many as 21 defensive players being taken in the 1st round. I'm thinking it could go higher than that. The offensive line group I was also pretty impressed with, particularly at the Senior Bowl. I'm kind of trying to teach myself how to scout.
Yeah.
And going to, sit and watching those practices, I don't really know what I'm looking for, but I can spot, who's playing well and who's not, who's got talent and who doesn't. And there were 4 or 5 guys on the offensive line at the Senior Bowl that jumped out at me. My favorite is the kid out of Washington State, Andre Dillard. And people have been talking, his stock has really been rising, particularly since the combine. And there were 2 guys there from Oklahoma, both of whom were really solid. And it was fun to watch. And then I got to talk to a couple of scouts at the tailgate and was telling them this story. And I said, so I don't really know, what to look for, but I think I know who the guys that I like. And they said, well, tell us what you saw. And we started talking about it, and they were pretty much in agreement with the people that I had was able to pull out, and made me feel kind of good.
It's funny that you bring that up, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second so I can switch back over to get general view. I might actually end up changing the way we do some things here because the capture is not happening the way I want it to, but no worries. It's our first test run. But I want to take this setup that I have, my mic, my mixer, and bring it to the Senior Bowl and do podcasts there.
Oh, that'd be great.
Sit down and get like everybody's opinion from there.
Oh yeah.
And we don't even have to record video. We could just literally do audio. I can throw together pictures and other video that the people capture there, to throw together a montage basically.
Right.
But I've always wanted to go to the Senior Bowl. It's really a financial thing for me at the end of the year, with me being the only one working.
Right.
And I only have like a handful of mics, but I think next year might be the year that I go.
It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. The weather was miserable. But we got a real cross section of a lot of different things. We got the first day in practice. You get to go out and just sit there and watch them, which was very, very cool, and take notes and rank your players and stuff. And I went in totally blind. I didn't do any research on any of the players before I went, because I wanted to see if I could pick out the ones that were standing out.
Right.
And you're sitting there, and all of a sudden Montez Sweat does a swim move and crushes, doesn't crush him, but just envelops a quarterback in, 2.5 seconds. And everyone around you goes, whoa. And, so that was a lot of fun. And the second day it totally rained. So they moved the practice inside, so nobody got to go. So we all ended up over at the Renaissance Hotel, where Jim and Pat were doing the show. And we got to hang out while they were doing the show and meeting all sorts of other people. I met a couple of ex-Charger players, and John Gruden was running around, and it was just hanging with the NFL.
Oh yeah.
And then Thursday we were back out on the field, and I went to the north side that time and watched the other side practice, and and then just hanging in the parking lot. There's great food, and the guys are great, and it was just a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be able to eventually get like press credentials and stuff for the show, where we can go to Mobile, and it doesn't have to be, at the same time moving the changes on. That I wouldn't want to interfere with, But it'd be nice to be able to sit down like when practices are going on up in the broadcast booth and just watch and commentate while we're talking about things, and have, four people host, doing the show, I mean, heck, I could even get a second one of these, and we could compile all the audio together into one hard mixer like I have, and have that go to my laptop or whatever. But, thoughts for another time. But it would eventually be nice to do like the combine, as media as well. I mean, like, there's so much I want to do with this, but at the same time, I'm trying to be realistic. And I don't want to commit, myself and then like you or anybody else to it if they don't want to do it. But I just think it would be fun to do something like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. One of the things, the last thing on my football bucket list really is the NFL draft. And I've been saying for years, next year I'm going to do that. Next year I'm going to do that. And I just never have. And mostly because when it was in New York, I just had no desire to stand in line for 8 hours to get a decent seat.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit too elitist in my own mind for that. So I've always wanted to go. And then sure enough, what happens? The NFL draft is coming to Las Vegas next year.
Yeah.
So it's coming to me. So I'm going to make a big push to become a Sirius XM football intern for that week and see if I can weasel my way in.
I don't want to get anybody in trouble at Sirius XM, but this was several years ago. We had mentioned to who was the producer at the time?
Coleman?
No, it was the Daily Show producer that traveled with them.
Oh, okay.
I forget who it was, but we went to we were supposed to go to the afternoon practice, and they were just going to pull us from the group,
Right.
And then we would just come hang out with them, But they shifted our practice to the morning. The Seahawks did. So we went to the practice, and I don't know if you know Hawk. He was a trucker. Curtis.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Anyways, he was there. I was there. Dan from Montana. I don't know if you've. I don't know how. I haven't been really listening in live, and I don't. I just listen when I can on the app, but we all met up there. We were talking, and then um, one of them was able to flag over to at the time Tim Ryan. He's like, "Oh yeah, just when the practice is over, as you leave, make a left down at the bottom here. We'll get you press passes." So we had Sirius XM passes to go sit down with Tim and Pat, and this was Russell Wilson's rookie year. That's how long ago this was.
Oh wow. Yeah, no, they're pretty good about that actually. So
yeah, because I mean it's all about the fans. I mean, although I did have to deal with JB, I mean the Saints fan, but you know, but it was fun, and that kind of got me interested in doing this type of thing, a podcast or even internet radio. I don't know if my credentials are still good. My friend does. It's mostly like politics talk and a couple like different subject podcasts. And I might try to do that, get the audio out there. But I could actually do this live on internet radio. That might be interesting to do.
Yeah, I used to go to Seahawk camp all the time when I was out in Cheney.
Yeah, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump for you.
Yeah, so before they moved back to Seattle, and that was back when Adam Shine was doing the afternoon show.
Yeah.
So,
what's this on the draft? Hold on, I'll share this with you and pull it back up over here as it loads. And share that screen. Disney and NFL join forces to expand coverage of the NFL draft. Oh, this was dated in November, and I'm just now seeing it on my newsfeed. That's weird. ABC will broadcast all 3 NFL days of the NFL draft, including 2-night primetime coverage. Well, at least now I know where it's going to be.
Yep.
And it'll be a distinct telecast from the ESPN and NFL network too.
I missed the days when it was all on Saturday.
Oh yeah.
I would plan I would call them the high holy days, and I would plan my work month around that particular day. So if I was traveling and had to go to a particular city for an event or whatever, I would either leave a day early to get to, like, if I had to be there Monday, I would leave on Friday so I could be all day Saturday and Sunday in the hotel room watching the draft. And then vice versa. If I was finishing on Friday, I would stay an extra 2 days to watch it in the hotel room.
Yeah, I've gotten to the point where I try to schedule around the draft as well. I just happen to be fortunate enough that my days off now correspond with Thursday and Friday, the first 3 major rounds. But I can also, at work on Saturday, just kind of be like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to be doing the office work today if I'm opening. Be like, okay. have the ESPN app, or having the Sirius XM app, which sucks because it's like a 3-minute delay from live events.
Right.
So I'll have customers come in and we'll be talking like, oh yeah, did you hear so-and-so got drafted by so-and-so? I'm like, no, because I'm still back at draft pick number, 150, whatever. Like, oh, sorry, man. I'm like, yeah, it's no big deal.
I just during the playoffs last year, I had a friend in New Hampshire who put some money down on the Rams and the Patriots to win the NFC AFC championships, and he put it on the money line, so there were no point spreads. It was just a question of whether or not he won.
Yeah.
And he was back in New Hampshire, and I'm here in Vegas, and we're texting back and forth, but he was watching the game on the internet. I was watching the Rams as they come down to line up for the field goal, and he makes the field goal, and I texted him. I went, "Oh, so close!" And then 90 seconds later, I get up, "You jerk! What the hell did you just do to me?"
Yeah. Oh, I gotta. Had you break up there a little bit. I think it was my internet buffering, so it's all good. We got the gist of the story. But oh god, this I can't wait to get my new computer. But yeah, I'm just looking at the the most recent transactions. So, what's as of yesterday? Miami released Ted Larson, Andre Branch. Let's see. Let's see here. Malik McDowell was released by Seattle. There's this will be.
I'm telling you, there's a glut of talent out there right now, and teams are going to be totally remade because of this.
Yeah, they will.
And guys are going to be playing for less than they've ever played for before.
And that's just it. I understand players want to make as much money because they're only doing this for generally at most for the really high caliber players about 10 years. For the average NFL player, it's still 3.5 years or something like that.
Yep.
But I think that once players realize that, if they want to maximize their earning potential, they need to be willing to take less money than they have in the past.
Well, when it comes down to it, you need a job, and they'll hold out as long as they can, but the big money contracts will go fast. And then after that, if you're looking at a pool of, 15 linebackers that are on the free agent market, you can take your pick, and none of them are going to get a big contract, because if the first guy says no, you go to the second guy.
Yep. Jamie Collins is also out on free agency as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I was saying earlier, I would have signed him already to the Chargers.
But yeah, I mean, it's just it is one of those things. We have to as fans realize what our team needs are, and maybe that will be the idea for the next one, is kind of going over the team needs, because we are planning on doing the draft. Have you announced that yet in the NFL group, the Sirius Football Heads group?
You broke up. I didn't hear any of that.
Yeah, I was asking, have you announced the Sirius Football Heads draft yet?
I have not. I'm going to do that this week, and I do have the date for it. I just have to find my calendar here. It's the Saturday before the draft.
Okay.
So,
which is the typical one that we do, so that would be perfect. So let's see. I want to do this.
It would be April 20th is what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah. And I'm thinking maybe, I know generally I want to try and do this every couple weeks, preferably on a Thursday. Just hadn't got around to scheduling with you with new class and everything. But I'm thinking with doing the 14th next week, because we can go over like the first wave of free agency and see where the teams are at and kind of get a better idea of what the team needs are for each team.
Yeah, I can do that. That would be good.
And then just kind of go 2 weeks from there, and then when the season actually starts, hopefully we can do every week. Maybe not the preseason, but like once the actual season starts. And I'm going to try and reach out to the NFL. I do subscribe to the NFL Game Pass. And with that, you have access to the coaches tape. We could maybe go over like a player or two per week that might have been an egregious call or maybe a missed call or something like that. And we can actually have the video going up and we can talk about it.
Great.
What do you think about that?
I think that works fine.
Yep. And I want all of our listeners to also feel free to contact us, whether it's me on Facebook. I don't know if you want them contacting you, but I also have an email set up, and I'll post it in the description and with the link to the video and the audio where it'll be available. What do you think?
Sounds good.
All right. I think an hour is good for the first episode. We can kind of tweak it in maybe hour and a half, depending on what the topics are of the week.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We will catch you the next time around.
We will. And let's get that outro music going.